on the evidence, what can you infer about the suspect or suspects in this case?
Well, I would say that this is someone that planned this crime. This is someone that went in and engaged in really unprovoked homicide. So that tells me that this is someone that is very cold-blooded, very callous, intended to kill these people. He went.
Hey guys, so what do you guys think about that statement that it was unprovoked? Do you agree with that? Do you agree that the crime was unprovoked? So if it was unprovoked, what is the reason for the crime? Just random. What do you think, if it's unprovoked, what do you think the reason was for it? Now I want to play you another clip. There's not really anything there. It is from Fox News, just showing, I think, the location where the CCTV footage of the white vehicle that went past this particular food mart at 3:45 a.m., which is exactly in the ballpark. So we're going to look at that quickly. Let's bring it up over here. It's just really a little bit of footage from, I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. It's really just this. So that is the food mart. I don't know if it was that camera or some camera over here, but that is where there's the address, 802 Troy Road, right? You can see there's crime scene tape around this complex, and those look like investigators that are sort of on scene there. So that is the latest headline from Michael Ruiz. He's a well-known figure in high-profile true crime. He says, cops take hours of video from gas station after Clerk spots white car on night of stabbings. But the critical point of information is that it was around 3:45 a.m. That's the critical part. There is the vehicle. The question is that a Hyundai Elantra? It's white. It's the right day, November 13. It's the right time, around 3:45 a.m. Is that an Elantra? That's the question. So I think the first thing that is important to do and necessary to do is go to the map and go and have a look at this address, 802 Troy Road, and try and figure out, is that the route the killer took, or perhaps the witness took, whoever was driving this white vehicle, and what can we infer from all that? So let's go to Google Maps. There we go. And then we expand the side panel. We insert the address. Sorry, it's obviously changed since I was last on the link. So what was that address again? 802 Troy Road. So let's put that in. Troy Road. Right, and it is walking distance, just 1.2 miles away. So that's already telling you this is strong evidence. It's not something from the other side of town or a neighboring town. This is right there. This is literally about a mile away. So that is, if you walk there, what happens if you took another route? What happens if you went by bicycle? Then it would be 1.5 miles. What about by car? Then 1.4 miles, just 4 minutes. So that is certainly quite interesting. This idea that when the vehicle was spotted on the CCTV, it was 4 minutes away from 112 to King Road. And so the question then arises, was it on its way to the crime scene? So that is something I would definitely be asking. In terms of the footage, is the vehicle heading in the direction of 112 to King Road, right? In other words, if it was spotted at, what do you guys think? If it was spotted at 3:45 a.m., right? Do we think the crime had already been committed and let's assume that this is the vehicle. Do we think that the crime had already been committed and the driver is leaving the scene, or is the driver yet to commit the crime, assuming it is the driver, and he is heading there? And so what that would suggest is 4 minutes later. So if you take 3:45 and you add 4 minutes, that takes you to 3:49 a.m. So around about 10 to 4 in the morning. Is that more likely that the car's heading in that direction to commit the crime? Is this the killer in the vehicle? I think the other thing to bear in mind is that the witness said that the car was driving fast. So yeah, they say police said anyone in the Elantra may have critical information to share, but where's the part where she says just driving really, really fast? Just trying to find that. So you actually had someone who wasn't working at that shift when this was recorded, and because it's been so high profile, they just decided to kind of step by step go through the footage. Obviously, the footage hadn't been handed over. The cops were relying on, I guess, someone seeing something, which is kind of a little bit of a strange thing in a way. So she says the car drove by real quick. Can you guys see that? Let's just do that. Right? The car drove by real quick and turned down the side street off Highway 8, right? So let's see if we can find that. So I don't know if it says turned off a side street on Highway 8. Is it the street, Stein Avenue? So bear in mind, from this food mart, they could see that the vehicle turned off the road. So what other road is there that it could have turned off? I don't think it's that road, because that would take you to basically that area. I don't think it's, I suppose it could be that side, what's it, East White Avenue, it could be that way. But isn't it more likely that it turned down Steiner Avenue, right? And then went down this route, Steiner Avenue, into Taylor Avenue, and we're going to deal with A&W Restaurant in a moment. Went past A&W Restaurant, and it's possible that there's CCTV from this particular restaurant as well. That has come up in the news today as well. Atlas Aurora, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we know that this has come up. We've gotten CCTV footage, I think, from this restaurant today, and then also from the corner. Well, we know that law enforcement have been looking at the corner club, which is all the way up here. See if I can find it. There it is, the corner club, right? There's also CCTV from there that they've been dealing with. But let's kind of go back all the way down here. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this map. So this is the route the car could have taken if this is the side street that it took, down Stein Avenue, and then along Taylor, past this restaurant where there is CCTV. And I think there's also a gas station to the side of it, but we'll get to that. Let's have a look at some of the other... Yeah, it's not really showing the gas station there. Maybe we'll go to Street View in a second. Anyway, Taylor Avenue, and then there's the residence. So if you zoom out, I mean, it really is not a long distance, barely 1 mile to there, right? So it is looking like really strong evidence of the movements of this vehicle. Now, what I think definitely stands out is it potentially addresses and maybe even answers the question. Remember, we had the question, was the white vehicle just parked out there all along? Or did it arrive at a certain time, did it remain in transit for a certain time, a short time, and then did it leave? That's the other aspect, is are they going to also see the same vehicle passing by the same spot again? Now, it's possible the vehicle might take a slightly different route, but if it was coming from this way, then it's suggesting maybe the perpetrator, if it is the perpetrator, lives on this side of town, right? It may suggest that the perpetrator is actually even a resident of the town, not a student, because it's someone who's coming from, well, that part of town, okay? So that's the other part that I want to draw your attention to. Earlier today, I was actually looking at this map and I noticed a couple of things that really stood out. I was really concentrating. I wanted to look at where this restaurant was, but I noticed a couple of things that I hadn't noticed before. For example, let's see if I can bring it up. I'm looking for the naval sort of naval academy. Let's just, maybe if I search for it, I'll find it. Naval. Yeah, unfortunately, okay, so let's do it this way. I had all of this information on the tip of my tongue, and unfortunately, I lost a lot of it. Maybe I can get it off my email. I think it's is it RTOC? RTOC. Reserve Officers Training Corps, that's right, RTOC. So this is another view of the drive-through, and you can kind of see there's looks like a gas station on the side of it. And if you look at another picture, there's the camera on the side of that. But there's a Naval Reserve Officers Training Corps in Moscow, and that kind of addresses this whole idea: is could there be? Is it going to bring it up if I say ROTC? ROTC, but it's in Moscow. There it is. Okay. So there it is. There's the U.S. Naval ROTC Blake Avenue. That's where it is. And then there's the U.S. Is it U.S. Naval? No, it's U.S. Army. U.S. Army ROTC Moscow, Idaho. Yeah, so that's the other one. And I just found that quite interesting because elsewhere I'd seen someone talking about the knife being something that he recognized as a K-bar knife and what he considered to be military issue, right? And so while I was sort of just looking on the map, trying to actually find this A&W restaurant, I actually noticed, wow, there's a U.S. Naval ROTC. ROTC means Reserve Officers Training Corps. I'll put a link to that in chat, right? And so the reason why that's quite important to think about is, are we dealing with a student, or are we dealing with someone who's a student but kind of not, someone who's really in the military but in Moscow, right? Someone who is slightly different to the other students, someone who whose education is different, their income level is different, their whole attitude to life is different, and maybe also they have a K-bar knife, and maybe the murder weapon is actually something that is military issue. Who knows? Maybe it's something they got from a parent, maybe it's just something that they're interested in. But what is interesting is very, very close 112 King Road is this US Naval ROTC. It's even closer. I mean, if you just take that distance, it's literally 200 or 300 meters from the house. And so literally someone who was often going to class there may have visited there, right? Does that seem likely or logical? Timmy, do you think that's likely? Okay, let me bring you into the picture. Okay. And then, so besides the US Naval ROTC, there's also the it's a very odd evening. There's also the US Army ROTC, which is a bit further away, right? Now, the other thing that I was looking for while I was looking at this map was, bear in mind, I'm nowhere near Idaho, and I'm just trying to figure out what is going on there. So I was wondering, where is the sports field? There was a football game that day, and isn't that a big deal? Isn't there something to the fact that there was a football game basically the night of the murders, the weekend of the murders, right? And so I also want to look at where is the football field. And you may remember in the analysis I did earlier today, I was talking about how the police officer who was doing these citations was mentioning to the kids, wow, it's a really quiet Saturday night. And I think part of the reason for that was that neighborhood was quiet. There would usually be a lot of partying, but part of the reason the neighborhood was quiet was because there were parties going on related to the football game beyond the neighborhood, actually in Idaho itself, right? Then you start to think about, so if there's a football game, who is going to be interested in that? Well, obviously students from Idaho, but what about military folk? What about military people that are also interested in guys playing sport, right? And anyway, so if we look at this map, that is the football field, right? So there is King Road and there is the football field. Okay, Timmy, I think I'm gonna have to put you down. Okay, so I'm gonna put it up onto the satellite so you can see it a bit more clearly. And I'm gonna take myself out the picture, and actually I need to probably get rid of that and that. Okay, so let's go back to that. So now you get a better idea of kind of what we're talking about. So there is 1122 King Road, right? You can see there's a road that sort of curves around the back, and there seems to be a parking area. If we go out a little bit, there's some of the sororities around it. There's the U.S. Naval Reserve Officers Training Corps. So you can see it's literally 2 minutes away, very, very close. And then there's also a farmhouse fraternity, right? I'm not quite sure if that's to do with people studying agriculture. There's the University of Idaho water tower. You see it in some of the images. There's also the golf course here. I don't know if you guys noticed that when the house has been cleared out, I don't know if you guys noticed, someone owns golf clubs in that house. So someone is playing golf on this course as well. And the house is just around the corner from the golf course as well. So we're starting to get to know this town a lot better than we did in the beginning. So, but the question is, where's this football field? And the answer is, well, it's right over there, right? So the football field is fairly close to where the house is, but probably where the parties were sort of somewhere up here. Where's that corner? Is it going to come up here? The corner bar. I think have we passed it? The corner bar is somewhere up here. Let's do another search. Corner bar. Corner club, okay. So there's the corner club, and the football field is sort of there next to the Kibbe Dome. So what everyone did after they watched the game was they sort of went that way. They went sort of into this fabric, I guess, right? And so in other words, they're going to the, what is it? The east of this part of town. They're going in that direction from this area, and to some extent to the north as well, into this sort of area. The Grub Street truck was also in this sort of area. Now it seems like it's possible that the killer, if the killer is the driver of that vehicle, it seems like it's possible that the killer comes from somewhere here, somewhere in this area, because they're coming down this road. Does that make sense? So it seems like the road that was taken by the killer was coming from somewhere here and took this turn off, and then went through there and through there and through there, right? Does that make sense? That's the route that we looked at a little bit earlier. So if the killer is coming from here, and that's an assumption, then we've kind of got to ask, where did the killer get onto this road? And there are a couple of options. It could be from this side of town. Could be somewhere from this side of town. There's another golf club. It could be someone who lives here. There's Moscow Dog Park. But can you see that it is now starting to appear that it might not be a student. It might not be a student. It could be someone who's studying to be in the military, or it could be someone who's in the military and their child is studying to be in the military. It could be something like that. But it seems like someone that might be coming from this side of town. And that would, in a way, explain why it's taken so long to identify who it is, because it is someone that is not that well known to the kids. It's not someone who is well known to them. It's someone who isn't. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say is that the vehicle coming from this side, where's that street name? Is it Styler? The Steiner Avenue. The vehicle coming from this side of town is taking you right out of that student fabric, which suggests that if the vehicle belongs to the killer, then the killer lives outside the student fabric. Does that make sense? Hey Jude says ROTC scholarship pays tuition. Okay. Dear Feeder says, are there any CV pharmacies there? So, I mean, we don't know. First of all, we don't know for a fact that this is the vehicle. We don't know if it's the right vehicle. It certainly is the right time, place to some extent, and it is a white vehicle. It is the basic shape of a white vehicle. It's not an SUV. It's not a pickup truck. It's not a small little vehicle. It's basically the right shape. And it does look like it was heading in the direction at 3:45, just heading in the direction of 1122, like it knew where it was going. Do you remember them saying, witnesses who saw Richard Allen said, or they thought they saw someone who looked like Richard Allen, said he knew where he was going. The person seemed to know what he was doing and where he was going. Well, it seems like this driver knows where he's going, right? And if he was maintaining speed, would have arrived at the house at 3:49 a.m. and could have committed the crime within 5 minutes of arriving there, especially if they had the key code. And isn't that when Einan Harsh heard the scream, just before 4 a.m.? Doesn't it start fitting together? So it's very interesting that this AW restaurant has come up in some of the people who have been providing, I guess, evidence. Didn't that come up? Let me just see if I can find the story that mentions that. AW restaurant. Don't know if it's going to come up. Maybe I need to do it the other way around. Sorry, I had all of these links lined up. And yeah, I'll tell you guys about it later. Yeah, I don't see it now. I don't see it now. I think it was with a story dealing with lots of tips. Tips point about white car sought by police. It's not, it was from today. Maybe that's the best way to search for it. Yeah, I'm trying to find the story that deals with the A&W restaurant and then also the corner club. I had that on my list. I just don't have it now. Maybe I can find it also in my emails. Let's see if I can find it. Sorry about this. Is it in this Fox News video? Yeah, it might be this video. Might be this video. Can you guys hear?
The coroner has ruled the killings took place between 3 and 4 a.m. And about 7 hours later, the 911 call was placed. So police are still trying to fill in those gaps. Alexis McAdams is in Moscow, Idaho. And Alexis, are they able to do any of that?
Hi, Dana. Yeah, they're trying to work to fill in that timeline and those gaps using surveillance video from nearby businesses, at least 2 that we've been able to confirm, which is new. This all comes as the hunt for the killer in Moscow, Idaho continues. Take a look here. This is one of the pieces of video evidence police were able to get right in the first beginning stages.
So this is the evidence we know about the
lots of video clips,
truck,
including this one
that was released that shows Kaylee
Gonsalves and Maddie Mogan out at a local food truck just hours before they were murdered. Just before that, Dana, police say the girls were at this local bar. We now know investigators collected surveillance footage from that corner club, which has cameras both inside and outside of the bar.
Cameras inside and
Investigators
outside.
also downloaded several hours of video evidence from a nearby gas station that is only a half a mile away from the murder scene. So this just kind of shows you exactly what areas they're looking at. As police comb through the video from at least 2 local businesses and ask the public to review their own videos, investigators are trying to seek information to track down a white Hyundai Elantra spotted near the home around the time of the murders. It's a 2000.
So if you look at that, if you look at the Hyundai Elantra in that, look at what a short
1 month later,
back
still no
it's got.
suspect motive.
And also look at how kind of long those lights are in the front. Kind of got a longish light, right? Well, isn't that what we're seeing in some of these, in the screen grab from today? Isn't that what we're seeing? Isn't that doesn't it look like it is an Elantra? It's got a short behind and it's got quite long lights. Doesn't it look like that? What do you guys think? Let's deal with some of your comments. Dove in Dolly's mom says, it looks like any car to me. Okay. So nothing to see here. Let's go down some different avenue. Hey Jude says the headlights are set deep back in reflection wells. Okay. Anne Wyatt says I'm certain it was a drug gang type thing. Okay. So the part that I think is really interesting is if you, and it is making a couple of assumptions, if you assume that this is the car and you assume the killer drove this car, it's not just a witness, and you assume, well, what route did the killer take? Well, we're already seeing now that someone has come forward from a certain part of Moscow that is really close to the home of the victims. And then we've just heard from this report that police have recently taken hours and hours of footage from this business. What is it? The A&W restaurant, and then the forecourt beside it. That is going to be able to show that this same vehicle, did it pass there 30 seconds later? Also, did it pass in the opposite direction, perhaps 10 minutes late after that? And so in that sense, it could be very damning if this vehicle is driving towards 112 King Road just before 4 a.m. and then drives away from King Road at just after 4 a.m. Does that make sense? Do you guys agree with that? That could be very, very damning. And then you kind of got to ask yourself, if it's not a vehicle, well, then it has to be someone walking around by themselves, very likely. I think some people think that 4 people go into the house and attack 4 people. That may make sense to you, but then you would have an orgy of evidence. You'd have 4 different perpetrators, like stomping through the crime scene at the same time. I mean, that's really very unlikely. But some people think that that's the case. But then it would be very easy to notice 4 people walking, right? And you'd have 4 people with bloody clothes as well. Okay. Just want to see what the other thing was that I wanted to show you guys. In terms of the map. Let's go back to the map quickly. So there is what we're talking about. 112 King Road, Corner Club. There's that US Naval thing. Look how close that is. Look how close it is compared to the Corner Club. Very, very, very close by. And then this is that road going through, I think. And then that's the other road, the highway. And then where could this person have been coming from? Somewhere on this side of town. And look where the country mobile homes are. Also on this side of town. Or is it even further? You know, what are we talking about? But can you see, it feels like it's not someone who's as part of the student fabric as we first thought, based on what we know now. There's also an airport over here. So did the person come from the airport? Was it someone who came out of town and rented a car? Well, then they would have been coming from this road. Hypothetically, I don't know. So I think law enforcement need to start looking into the fabric sort of over here. If they came down this road, Highway 8, looking at the fabric over here, Alturas Drive, some of these roads on this side of town, and over here, Ridgeway Drive. I guess also this sort of section of the urban fabric. But basically, instead of looking in this neighborhood, which is what they've been doing, and going through the students and what was going on at the grub truck, maybe they need to be thinking about what was going on here. Who knows? Okay, so I want to talk to you guys about the number 4 clue we all missed. Before I do, I just want to see if there's anything else to deal with in this article. So let's kind of go through it. So just to confirm, it was spotted at 3:45 a.m. on November 13. and it was going in, looks like the direction of 1122 King Road, and so it probably would have passed this particular point over here. It would have passed this restaurant. So if it went down Steiner, it would have come down here, and it would have passed that camera, which you see in. Can you guys hear the thunder and lightning? I did show it earlier, but that is that drive-through, and then can you see over there? Let me do it like that. Can you see over there on that little edge there of the facade of the building is a little thing sticking out? Well, that thing sticking out is that camera. So the question is, are they going to be able to track that vehicle that was seen by the food mart at 802 Troy Road? Are they going to be able to track it all the way to this A&W restaurant, right? Are they going to be able to track it going past sort of this route, doing a sort of a dog's leg, and then down Taylor Avenue? So it's down Steiner, then it would turn up here, right next to this A&W restaurant, and then go down Taylor Avenue. I suppose it could also go straight, could go this way as well, and up there. Maybe that's more likely. Lauder Avenue and then up into Taylor. But I think either way, they'd be able to see it from the CCTV over here, whether the vehicle went that way or that way, and then also when it came back. That's the other thing to bear in mind is if someone was leaving the crime scene here, which route would they take? If the killer is trying to return to this side of town, what are his options in terms of driving back? Well, one of them is to sort of thread his way through to this road, and then maybe drive that way. But who knows, maybe he would drive basically back that way, back down Steiner, who knows? So that's the other issue, is he's got to get back to where he came from, and are they going to be able to trace that as well? So I guess we'll see. But can you see how quickly you can go from almost nothing to suddenly it starts gathering momentum? If the white car, I mean, somebody did say that the white car is not only relevant, it's the most significant clue so far. If the white car is the killer, then we are starting to find the white car, which means we can find the killer. We might be able to find the killer very quickly. Now, what is quite interesting in how the Clerk from the food mart found this footage, where she said the following. Let's just go to that. She said, I had a weird feeling to go get on the cameras. So she said she reached the 3 o'clock hour. It was on Monday night, and it was 3 o'clock, I guess, in the morning. No. That's she reached the 3 o'clock hour of the footage and she spotted the car. Let's kind of go through this. She says, an overnight assistant manager told Fox News she's been reviewing the tapes a little bit at a time over the past few days. Okay. So every day she sort of comes into work and watches a little bit of the footage. And obviously she's been watching the news, and we're looking for tips and we're looking for information. And she's been wondering, I wonder whether there's something on our systems. Looking for clues in her downtime on the graveyard shift. She's probably been maybe bored, maybe watching YouTube videos, maybe trying to get some information. By the way, if you are that person watching this video, please let us know. Anyway, she said she was not working the night of the murders. Then on Monday night, she said she reached the 3 o'clock hour. It took a long time to get to that point, and that's when she spotted the car. She said she took a picture of the screen, and you can see a reflection of the phone and fingers on the side of that image. And she said she sent it to an email police set up to receive tips. Do you remember yesterday I repeated that email address? Well, she used that email, and then the police came to that food mart and cordoned it off, and they've been checking it out, right? So there you can see the fingers, her fingers, and the camera taking a photo of the recording. The other thing that's quite interesting is it's a color recording. You can see the red of the lights on that side. I think it's color recording. You can see the color of her fingers as well. But I think the recording is color. The CCTV recording is color. The other thing that's quite interesting is it looks like this vehicle, looks like the windows are, well, I guess it's the question, are the vehicle's windows tinted? Is it possible to actually see the driver through this window in the footage? Wouldn't that be something? So another thing that they can definitely do, and she says the car drove by real quick, right? Turn down a side street on Highway 8. So the other thing that I think they would want to do is, we know that the law enforcement looked at tire tracks. So it looked like someone drove away from there in a hurry. And we previously looked at that. Are those tire tracks from a SUV? It doesn't look like it. Are those tire tracks from a pickup truck? Doesn't look like it. Would those tire tracks match this vehicle's tire tracks? So that's something else that they can do. Tire tracks are like shoe prints or footprints. They can be bigger or smaller. They can nevertheless be a kind of a signature, right? I'll just quickly play, before I get onto the fourth clue we all missed, I'll just quickly play this clip where the police have come to look at this store. So this is the address. It's a food mart, 802 Troy Road. Look at all this crime scene tape. Oh, I just can't see that. Look at all of this crime scene tape in front of the food mart. And so the Fox report is actually, so there is the, actually going through, there it is, the 13th, Sunday, the 13th of November, 3:45 and 10 seconds. There it is. It's quite incredible. It would be nice if you could see just a bit more to the side here. What are we seeing over there? So anyway, where's that video? It's not there. I think it's over here. Okay. So can you imagine that's a law enforcement vehicle? That might be as well. And one does wonder, where are the cameras that recorded it? That's not a camera. Can you see any cameras here? So, I mean, can you feel how the investigation seems to be picking up speed, and it's also galvanizing the community? Like the community are literally helping to solve this case. And it is interesting, I did mention that how important CCTV is. I wonder whether the clerk heard me saying that, or maybe heard somebody else saying that, and then concentrated on her CCTV. That would be quite something. Let's look at some of your comments. Kimberly says accidental something. Okay. Casey says looks like a camera on dental roof. Someone said check airport parking. That was also the case with the Kylie Rodney case. We also thought that could be pertinent. People coming out of town. Cheryl says, what if the car is being garaged? Well, you would think that neighbors would know that this car lives in the area, right? Jude 1 says, this is exciting. Miss Jane says, I'm gobsmacked by this crime. If what I've said is true, and we've now established the vehicle coming to the scene, and if they can try and track the vehicle leaving the scene, then I think it's really only a matter of time tracking the vehicle to its owner. Really, I don't think. I mean, then you could get glimpses of the license plate. You could get glimpses of the driver. You could start looking for dash cam footage of other drivers, Ubers, and so on. You could actually start asking for doorbell footage of people whose homes may be on the killer's route, all that sort of thing. So that's why I think, yeah, it may not be much longer before an arrest is made. So the police may actually have a lot of information already, but that they need to show a connection between what they think and what they, in other words, what they think and what they can prove. And this may be that link. And that's a fantastic point. That's one of the last things I want to say about this. The fact that no one has come forward saying, hi, it's me. I own a white Yanda. I just went to buy a chocolate that night. The fact that no one's come forward seems to suggest it's not innocent. The car driving there and perhaps leaving is not innocent. That's a good point. It's definitely a good point. Okay. Susan says, what was the car whipping by on the body cam at 312? Was that nothing? Well, 312 is half an hour earlier, so that's quite a lot of time. And this vehicle is coming into that area, so who knows? I don't think it's anything, but it's certainly the sort of thing that they need to be looking for is let's look for vehicles at this particular time, and this is kind of a big bingo in that sense, right? James D says police knew about this car early on. Okay. As far as I know, they didn't say it was between 3:30 and 3:30. They said between 3 and 4. That's how I understood it. Yeah, exactly. Someone is a neighbor of that car. I know cars in my area. Surely someone will come forward. Yeah. So I think when it starts, the next announcement from law enforcement might be that it's a vehicle from East Idaho, or something like that. It appears to be. Okay, so I'm now going to take you guys into a different area, and it is the number 4 clue that we all missed, right? And what I want to ask you guys is basically, in a crime like this, when you think of the Idaho student murders, what's the first thing that really stands out within the crime fabric? If you're new to true crime, this will be an interesting way to test your critical thinking. If you an old hat at true crime, the same thing kind of applies. What is idiosyncratic about this particular crime? And then if you get that answer right, so what is the most idiosyncratic thing about this crime? What's the first inference to draw from that, right? So that may sound cryptic, and we're going to get to the critical thinking engine. We're going to try and get the critical thinking engines burning. But first, we want to look at some of the main evidence aspects in crimes like this that involved a knife attack on 2 victims, literally at the same time. So there was a lot of blood and a particular set of crime scene evidence. So what can we expect to see in this crime that you see in another crime that involves similar things? So first of all, this. So let me put that over there. So that is the knife O.J. Simpson. Well, that is the knife that was used in the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. That's not the murder weapon, but they say that is what the murder weapon probably looked like. and I don't think they ever found it, right? So that's part of the evidence artifacts of this particular case, right? Jeepers, can't believe how much. So anyway, so the next thing to bring up is how many crimes in America do you think take place with knives? Like how often do you think knives are involved in crimes? So if you think about the different ways that murders can be committed, specifically murders, not just crimes, what do you think the proportion is? In terms of statistics, how many crimes do you think are committed by murders with certain different kinds of weapons? Where do you think knives fit into that? So the answer is about 45% of all crimes are with handguns, right? And then other firearms as well comprise a certain large amount. And then knives are just over 10%. So a knife crime is actually fairly rare, right? A knife crime is fairly rare. It's 1 in 10 or 10% of murders are committed with a knife. And so what that's telling you is there's something quite sort of unique about the perpetrator. The perpetrator may be poor to own a handgun. The perpetrator may be a certain kind of person. So let's see if I can bring that up. So the weapons most commonly used, knives or cutting instruments, 10%. That's homicides in the United States. The source for that is criminalattorneycolumbus.com, right? So handguns, 45.7%, almost half. Other kinds of firearms, another 23%. So if you add that up, it's already almost 70%. So almost 3/4 of all crimes are committed with firearms. And then knives are just 10%. And then things like manual strangulation, so hands, half as many as knife crimes. So manual strangulation, let's say 5%, knives twice that, 10%, and then handguns almost 50%. So that should give you an idea. So the other thing that's quite interesting is which state do you think in which states do you think there are other weapons that are used besides handguns? So if handguns are commonly used, if firearms are commonly used, which states are other weapons used, including knives? Well, do you think Idaho comes up as one of those states? Let's have a look. In which state is each type of weapon most commonly used in homicides? Idaho is found to have the highest percentage of homicides using other weapons at 37.1%. That's Idaho. That's the whole state. The highest percentage of homicides using other weapons at 37.1%. Rhode Island had the highest percentage of people using knives in particular. So there is something going on in Idaho where people are interested in weapons besides knives, besides handguns. Isn't that curious? Yvonne says Idaho because of hunting. Jude says hunting states. Okay, so there's one more graphic I wanted to show you. Is it over here? This really illustrates it quite nicely. Which weapons are most commonly used for homicides? And this is in America. It's FBI collected data on the weapon used in almost 14,000 homicides during 2019. 10,000 were committed using a firearm, but there you have it. Just 1,400, well, just 1,400, 10% knives or cutting instruments. So there you can see the little piece of the the crime pizza is just 10%. Handguns by far the majority. Other weapons like blunt objects, poison, explosives is actually even more than knives. Similar amount, but more than that. This big quadrant here is also firearms, shotguns as well, rifles as well. So essentially the gun component of this goes all the way around there, includes that. And then in this little section here, which includes hands, blunt objects, poisons, whatever, knives, is that little piece there. So the point of showing you guys this is just to say that what you're dealing with here is actually quite unusual. It's not typical, it's not the average, it's somewhat unconventional, which may in turn suggest that the killer may be somewhat different to the average kind of killer. Well, in what way? Okay. So that's the first aspect I wanted to deal with. Now I want to come back to the O.J. Simpson case. Now remember I asked you guys the question, I think I'm going to put it in chat. When you think of the Idaho student murders, what's the first thing that really stands out within the crime fabric? By now you should really have a good idea. What stands out in terms of the crime fabric? I mean, from a distance, without really, almost like looking at the very first headline, what really stands out? Someone says, too young to buy a firearm. Could it be a felon? There you go, Christopher, well done. The choice of weapon, right? So the fact that he's used a knife is very kind of idiosyncratic, quite unusual. Because it's a knife that's used, that then brings up the next thing. What's the first inference to draw from that? And that's a much harder question. I don't expect you guys to get that right, but I'm going to show you some pictures and it should make it a lot easier. So a knife is used. So what's the first inference you can draw from that? And it's kind of from the perspective of you're an investigator. So what are you going to be looking for? Someone used a knife. So now you're going to the crime scene, you know you used a knife. What are you going to be looking for? So let's go through this kind of step by step. So the first thing to mention, and we're going to deal now with the O.J. Simpson case, is, do you know what you're seeing in this image? So bear in mind the text that is, Becky, good to see you here. Welcome. So bear in mind the text that you were seeing on your screen. Deborah says, maybe the killer wants to stand out. No, I don't think so. Well, I can't actually find the comment that I put up. Okay, so what's the first inference to draw from that? But the first inference to draw from the weapon, from the knife, right? What's the first inference? Now, I'm going to take you through a couple of basic, classic aspects to the O.J. Simpson case. And I've written 3 books on that case. And so here are a couple. You may or may not remember these. This was, I think, O.J. Simpson's doctor. Shall I bring this up to sort of full size? Did you know that O.J. Simpson had quite a nasty gash on his finger, on his middle finger, right? I don't want to be rude, but it's this finger here, the longest finger. So that is in court. That is O.J. Simpson's finger, and there you can see quite a nasty injury there. And what do you think caused that injury? What do you think caused that injury? It's sort of a look at the shape that it is. It's wider than it is. The height is relatively small or not a lot, and the width is quite a wide. It's a small injury, but it's quite wide. And then, I mean, I don't know why I'm struggling to say this, but you can just see that it is in some ways wide, and in other ways not very high in terms of this, the way we're looking at it here. It is, yeah, so it's a wide-ish, almost slit, it's almost that sort of shape, right? So what do you think caused that? What do you think could have caused that? So that's one of the things that came out of the O.J. Simpson case. Now I'm gonna, I actually originally had the link to this, but I had a problem with Patreon not saving the draft. But anyway, so from this particular slide, you can see the finger again. You can actually see this, the finger is still somewhat bloody. You can see there's still a little bit of bleeding on this finger. I'm not quite sure what so the date was the 13th of June. So as long as, well, so this is really just the next day. This is the day after the murder. And that finger was still not only bleeding, but actually kind of swollen. Can you guys see that? Sorry, that's not what I want to show you. Where has it gone now? What has happened to it? Let's just do it again. Okay, so that's the picture I want to show you, and there you can see that finger sort of up close. You can see it's swollen, right? And you can see there's blood on it, and yeah, it's swollen, and there was some kind of injury to one side. I'm not sure if it's that side or that side, but there you go. And obviously, law enforcement thought it was significant enough to photograph it, right? Now, according to this slide, they say that OJ's story changed regarding how he cut himself. And it kind of raises quite an interesting question. If you cut yourself, can you remember how? Or is it quite a difficult, slippery thing? Like, I can't actually remember how I cut myself. Because OJ said, maybe in a rush to catch my flight. Then he said he broke a glass. I think he said that he broke a whiskey glass, or he took a whiskey glass out of the sink or something like that. Then he said he could have reopened a previous cut. And then I think at the civil trial, he said it could be from a fingernail. And it does look like it could be from a fingernail. It's got a similar look to the fingernail. Do you think it is from a fingernail? So we've looked at two aspects now. That what is idiosyncratic to what we're talking about? Well, a knife. Also that you can have injuries beyond victims potentially, and injuries to where? Well, maybe to hands, right? The other thing to look at is you can have shoe prints in blood. The shoe print FBI, and they talk here about. I'm not trying to make the case here for whether OJ is guilty or not. I'm simply trying to show you some of the evidence related to that. But they found shoe prints at the scene, and you would be looking at things like the size of the shoe print and that sort of thing. Again, is that the thing that's the standout feature? Then there's something else, again, from the same source. You would also have blood, for example, in the vehicle. So if they find this white Hyundai, they really want to look inside the vehicle to see if they can find any blood, right? They would want to get that vehicle ASAP and check whether there are any traces of blood, as you see in this image, right? And then, yeah, so it's not only a knife crime. So bear in mind, in terms of a knife crime, you have a situation where someone is at arm's length to somebody else, but the victim is also at arm's length to the perpetrator. So the victim can also, in a life and death struggle, they can try to defend themselves with their hands, with their fists, with their fingernails. They may try and grasp the perpetrator by the hand, by the wrist, by the arm, pushing away the chest, but also trying to perhaps pull clothing or something like that. So you can have all of those sort of situations. Injuries to the perpetrator, torn clothing, but where are the injuries most likely to be? Well, basically all along the length of the limb that is executing the crime. So limb with a knife, so fighting off the hand, trying to control the wrist, trying to control the arm, shoulder, and then perhaps even the neck, right? Trying to push the person back in terms of their neck. In the Chris Watts case, you didn't have knives, but you had close quarters. You had a close quarter attack. And did Chris Watts have an injury? Did Chris Watts have an injury? That's on his neck. And his explanation, sorry, let's just bring that up like that. Do you think that is an injury? So this was another link that I had totally available and lost it because Patreon didn't save it. Anyway, here it is again. So if you look at this, this is from a website that I used to regularly update. I'll put a link to that in chat. If you look at that scar over there, under different sort of, with the coloration change to some extent, you can clearly see that there is a bit of a contusion there. And then the question again is, what created that contusion? What do you guys think created that contusion? Okay, so it looks to me like it could be a fingernail. A fingernail could have made that as well. And the thing that's also interesting is in the Amanda Knox case, you have a similar situation. You have, so there's some additional versions of that. In the Amanda Knox case, you have, that is from the crime scene, that's from the police files, and they seem to think that she had a scar on her neck, and there's a picture of it. And the roommate or housemate also mentioned that it looked like that she'd seen that. And then the question is that scar? You see that scar, you see that scar. Is that a scar? Is that a scar over there? Are you seeing, is that the scar over there? Is that the scar? Or is it a shadow? Is that the scar over there? Is that the scar? And whether or not you're interested in talking about Amanda Knox, it really just raises that idea of someone who could have been very close to the victim, or the victim could have scratched the perpetrator. And that's exactly the same question we're asking in this case. Was the perpetrator scratched? Well, guess what? He had 4 opportunities to be scratched, right? There's another, so in other words, what I'm trying to get at is the number 4 clue that we all missed is this is idiosyncratically a knife crime, and so it's very likely that the perpetrator is injured. It's very likely that the perpetrator, first of all, got injured by one or more of his victims, but secondly, could have been injured by cutting himself, and we're going to deal with that in a moment. So in the Jodi Arias case, This comes from, I think it's the Jodi Arias trial or something like that blog. Did you guys know that Jodi Arias hurt her finger? And you can see in that image over there that her finger is kind of crooked, and it sort of looks like that it's written here, it's highly probable Jodi injured her tendon over there on June 4th while committing her crime, resulting in an extensor tendon injury. So what are we talking about when that happens? Well, think about in the execution of the crime, blood actually wets the hand and the knife of the perpetrator, right? And so after and while the perpetrator is committing the first crime, the knife, the blade, but the knife handle as well, and the hand of the perpetrator all become wet. And it doesn't really matter whether the perpetrator is wearing a glove or not. It all becomes a lot more slippery. And so things get more and more slippery as the crime goes on. The criminal can slip in terms of his footing on blood underneath him. When he leaves the scene, he can slip. But in terms of holding the blade, it can also slip out of his hand. And that can create a scenario of him cutting himself, which is exactly what it looks like happened with Jodi Arias, right? So the question is, does this perpetrator have cuts on his hands? So in other words, self-inflicted, not purposefully self-inflicted, but self-inflicted knife wounds. And does he have wounds inflicted by victims that are like fingernail marks, right? This is potentially something like that. Let's see if I can find it. So this is another case, and some of you may recognize it. These appear to be fingernail injuries, and they quite a similar shape in a way to that original one we saw with O.J. Simpson on the finger, that looked like kind of a fingernail shape. Anyway, this is a fingernail shape. This is the arm of someone who was accused of murder. Some of you will recognize this case. And this looks like someone was very close to, it could be a situation where someone was very at close quarters to someone and they did that. And so are we dealing with these sorts of injuries with our perpetrator, right? Now, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I don't know if you've ever played tennis or played squash and you started perspiring, it's really hot or humid, and you've been exerting yourself, and some of your perspiration kind of gets onto the handle of the racket, and then it starts slipping. As soon as it kind of gets wet, your hands are wet, the racket handle is wet, and then you are trying to hit the ball quite forcefully, and as a result, the racket is slipping in your hand. And I've literally played squash where I've tried to hit the ball and the racket has completely left my hand, and I've effectively thrown the racket across the court just because it slipped out of my hand. So you could literally have that situation of the knife. Well, I've got some mosquitoes coming through here. You've literally got the situation of the handle of the knife becoming so slippery that it becomes really treacherous to work with, and even wiping it remains slippery. And then that's the next aspect. Did the killer wipe the so if you look at this image, that is a squash racket. As soon as it gets wet, as soon as the handle gets wet, as soon as your hand gets wet, it's so easy for it to slip in your hand and to sort of slip out of your hand. The same applies with a knife handle. Often knife handles are far more slippery than like a squash racket. And in the Amanda Knox case, you do have, let's see if I can just find, I had all of this information so well put out. It does look like someone either put the knife down. Can you guys see that? Oh, they put the knife down and left an imprint on Meredith's bed. There you can see a very good imprint of the knife. Now, was that to clean the blade or to clean the knife or to clean the handle? Or was that the person that was trying to wipe their hands off, right? So that's something else you could expect from this crime, is that someone may have tried to use, they were in the bedroom, may have used the sheets or the blankets or the pillowcase to wipe the blade or wipe the handle or wipe their hands in the middle of executing this crime. Why it's such good news in terms of investigating this case, I'm talking about the knife as the murder weapon means that it's very likely that the killer did injure himself either through a self-inflicted wound or through the victims injuring them. And so you could get DNA under their fingernails, but you could also get mixed blood DNA samples as a result of the killer's blood where he's cut himself, mixing with the blood of the victims. And it's that difficult task that the forensics have got to do to isolate that particular DNA that is mixed with the victim's DNA. But I'm just saying there is a real likelihood that the perpetrator got injured in this incident. Bear in mind, Jodi Arias killed one person, Travis, and she cut her finger. Chris Watts killed multiple people, but when he killed his wife, that was a one-on-one encounter, and then he got injured. If you take the murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, wasn't that perpetrator injured? So that's the one thing to look at. Here's another image of the knife in the Amanda Knox case. It's quite interesting how it fits this. That's a silhouette of the knife, and you can see how it fits looks like it was placed on the bed in that image. This is the knife in the Jodi Arias case, right? Doesn't it look like a kitchen knife? Don't you guys recognize that as a sort of a kitchen knife? Well, that's because that's exactly what it is. The knife that Jodi Arias seemed to use came from I think they call it a knife block, but it's a block that you have in the kitchen where all the knives go in there, and you can see one knife is missing. I'm not sure if there's a second knife missing, but one knife is clearly missing there, right? And so could you have had a similar situation in this case where the killer arrived at the scene actually without a weapon? Maybe he was there for some other reason and then was upset while in the house. But I'm just saying it's possible, unlikely in my opinion, but possible that he actually found his murder weapon in the kitchen like Jodi Arias did. On the other hand, and we're going to deal with premeditation in a second. On the other hand, this case, this does seem like a premeditated crime based on the time, the number of victims, and I think the fact that some evidence was covered up as well. It does seem premeditated. So I'm just saying it's possible that the killer could have sourced his knife. Hold on a second. It's a solid blade knife, K-bar. I don't think they sourced that from the kitchen. Sorry, a bit of a brain fart there. Yeah, so that's out of the question. So I mean, I think it's clear that this crime is premeditated. In the Jodi Arias case, that was premeditated, but she actually found an additional murder weapon on the way. Sorry, I actually feel quite embarrassed now. That was a real brain fart. But she found an additional murder weapon on the way in the kitchen. She took a gun with her to Travis's house, so she definitely wanted to commit a crime. But then she added the knife to the whole thing. Zenaida, thanks a lot for that. Okay. Someone says, I think it's got a rubber grip. Okay, so this is the knife in the Amanda Knox case. And I think that is also a kitchen knife. So can you see how, can you guys see that? So can you see how in a case where, so the Jodi Arias case and the murder of Meredith Kercher, it looks like kitchen knives were both used, right? Looks like that. In this case, it's totally different. The knife seems to be more like, if you compare Jodi Arias using a kitchen knife and someone using a K-bar knife, can you see how it makes it feel more masculine? Jodi Arias gets a knife from the kitchen. That seems logical for a woman, but this guy got his knife from where? Is a military issue. And that really stood out. I was listening to someone on Law and Crime who said that the knife seems like a K-bar knife, which is military issue. And that made me think, what military connection is there to Moscow? And then I went and looked at the map, and lo and behold, there are military sort of academies in Moscow. In fact, right around the corner from 1122 King Road. And so could that not be part of the solution to this case, is look at who was there? Okay. The other thing that's quite interesting in the Amanda Knox case is that, so you had things like there was blood in the bathroom, there was blood on the bathroom mat, and the blood suggests that somebody used the bathroom in the middle of the crime to wash up. The other thing that's interesting is the footprints and shoe prints are not like in bright blood red that's in the crime scene of the Meredith Kercher case. It looks like it's either washed away or it's been diluted with water. So I'll show you a couple of pictures from that, if I can. So if you look at this image, can you see any bloody footprints? Let's bring it up to full size. If you look at that image, can you see any bloody footprints? Actually, shoe prints. So this is going through the kitchen. There's the fridge. I think the refrigerator. I think the front door is over there. The shoe prints are kind of leading out the house, out the front door. So do you see any shoe prints here when you look at that? So Deborah says military issue knives have bigger hilts. The thing is, no matter how good the grip, it's very likely that the killer slipped while he was holding the murder weapon. So yeah, so what you're seeing here is that the police have actually found almost invisible, an almost invisible track of the killer exiting the house. And so what does that suggest? Well, it suggests somebody mopped up or wiped away shoe prints, but didn't quite get it 100%. They didn't quite get rid of the shoe prints in blood 100%, maybe 90%. So that is the track through the kitchen. Now I'm going to show you the track through the hallway. Can you guys see bloody prints in the hallway? So these are evidence markers. That's the bathroom. But these are evidence markers outside Meredith Kurtz's bedroom, and then in the hallway leading to the kitchen. Can you see any shoe prints sort of leading out of there? You guys see any shoe prints leading out of there? So what you see here at evidence marker 3 is you can just make out, you can just slightly make out a sort of round concentric circle of a shoe print, partially left in blood, but it looks like it's actually been, I don't know, 80, 90% washed up, right? That's not how the original print was left. Somebody came afterwards and wiped it clean, but they only got rid of some of it. And if the crime was committed at night, maybe they couldn't quite see what they'd left behind, right? So you have the same thing in this case that we're dealing with. Is you're going to probably have shoe prints, and what shoe prints can arguably tell you, just like tire marks, is give you a ballpark of the kind of killer you're dealing with. Are they big shoes, small shoes, boots, sneakers? Does the person wear size 10 or size 6? And all that kind of thing, right? I'm just trying to see if I can find the... Okay, so there you go. You have that as well. So in the Knox case, during the trial, you also had that as evidence, and that was a footprint, not a shoe print, a footprint left in blood, but you can again see that blood is very diluted. It's very washed out. That wasn't how the original print probably was left. And so if the killer did go into the bathroom, probably he may have left, so he's trying to clean up evidence. He may have left shoe prints on towels or on bath mats, and then struggled to get it out of that as well. Anyway, that was the case in the trial of Amanda Knox. The other thing in this case was they were looking at this footprint and they're trying to find out whose foot could it be matched to. Was it a man's foot or a woman's foot? And I dealt with that in some of the books that I wrote on Amanda Knox. So that's that aspect. And then here is another better quality image of a shoe print. Can you guys see that? This is also in the Amanda Knox case. But what I want to highlight here is you can see that that is not original blood. That's not that bright red blood that if you stepped into blood and you stepped onto the floor, it would look like that. This is blood that has already been diluted with water, but it's nevertheless there. Can you see that? So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see this sort of thing present in this case. We'll see. Amber, please don't make absolute statements about people's guilt. You could find yourself facing, you could have yourself dragged into court and you'd have to prove that. So just be careful making those sort of comments. Mods, please pay attention to that as well. I must say, in terms of Amanda Knox, what I think is quite interesting is if you think about this case, it involves students, it involves a student house, it involves a knife attack, it involves suspects who might be students. And it also perhaps involves suspects who might not be students. In the Amanda Knox case, the guy who was found guilty wasn't a student. And so, but what I find quite interesting is Amanda Knox has become a spokesperson in a way of true crime. Has she spoken about this case? You would think that she would be the go-to expert. She was a student. She was in a student house. There was a knife attack scenario. She could talk about the evidence in this case in a very authoritative way. Has she? I did try try and find out whether she's been commenting. I could only find one thing on Court TV. I had the link, but I unfortunately lost it. Where someone who was it? I think someone from the Innocence Project spoke on Court TV, and he's associated with Amanda Knox. He spoke about the DNA, but I really think Amanda Knox could talk about this case, talk about the evidence, and has she? I don't know. I don't know if you guys would know about that. Has she? She would be in a position to talk about this almost from someone who's been on the inside of that. So I wonder if she has been. Telling us that the car tinted windows would have helped. That's quite interesting. Okay, so a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up. So let's just reiterate. The number 4 clue that I think we all missed was this is idiosyncratically a knife crime, which is fairly rare. It's only 10% of murders are use knives as murder weapons. So that suggests that the perpetrator is injured, and he could be injured in at least 2 ways. One is by, while he's committing the crime, his hand slipping off the handle, the knife literally slipping out of his hand. Maybe it's knocked out of his hand by one of the victims, right? But basically a self-inflicted knife injury, a cut, a small little nick or whatever, or a fingernail type injury from one of the victims fighting for their lives. Thanks a lot, Miranda writes. Thanks a lot for that. But I think the biggest issue facing this perpetrator is because there's so much blood, there's just going to be an evidence trail that is going to be very, very obvious. And if he attempts also to extinguish that evidence trail, well, that can also lead to him leaving behind evidence. So if he's bleeding and is wiping up evidence, he can nevertheless still leave a drop somewhere, which mixes with other blood, and then, well, there is his DNA profile. So that is actually very likely. So anyway, the number 4 clue we've all missed is that because it's a knife attack, the number 1 inference you can take out of that is that the perpetrator is injured. So we are very likely dealing with an injured perpetrator in this case. Okay, that's sort of the main thing I want to bring up. I think it's significant that there was a football game. And I think it's significant that the neighborhood was very quiet that particular night. And so did the perpetrator attend that football game, or was he annoyed about some party or something that had happened previous to that? Or did he see something on social media? If you ask the question, was he a local or out of town? What does the vehicle tell us?
You know, I have trading.
I think the answer is that he wasn't a local to the neighborhood, but he may have been a local to the town, which I think is quite interesting. So if you guys want to see where it's from the Law and Crime Network, where an expert talks about the knife being, what do they call it? Military issue. It's from this video here. So it's from this video here. I'm not going to play the video. Not going to play the video, but it's this guy, and then he sort of holds up the knife over there. So I'm going to put a link to that video in chat. Really worth watching. You guys can't see that. Okay, so it's this video from Law and Crime, that expert holding it up, and it's a video titled Idaho Shooting Murders, Narrowing Down Potential Suspects. I did think fairly early on that this criminal seems to have some issue with being a man, and it's got to do with masculinity. It's got to do with being emasculated. And the whole big knife seems to be kind of a phallic aspect. And then also the fact that it's a football game that night makes me think, was that relevant as well in some way? In terms of him maybe being intoxicated in some way, or him being agitated in some way, in terms of that. What else did I want to bring up? Okay, so the last thing I want to deal with is this expert from the FBI who speaks about the perpetrator not being provoked, right? So it's from CBS News. I'll put a link to that in chat as well. What is Susanna says, is there a personal connection? Hey Jude says, small town. Wow, yeah, it is quite a small town. So I'm going to play excerpts from this clip from CBS News. Let's do it like that. And see what you guys think. So I'm just going to take it back slightly. And think about this idea that it's unprovoked. What do you guys think about that? So let's go through this.
Well, I would say that this is someone that planned this crime. This is someone that went in and engaged in really unprovoked homicide. So that tells me that this is someone that is very cold-blooded, very callous, intended to kill these people. He went in the early morning hours, so not to have a conversation. So we know that offenders leave their personalities at the crime scene.
So she says it's unprovoked and offenders leave their personalities at the crime scene. I think that's true to some extent. But the whole unprovoked idea to me sounds like, well, it's totally fragmented. The killer, for whatever reason, it's unprovoked. He just went there and committed a crime. Now, I would agree that none of the 4 victims took out a knife and threatened the killer. I'm talking about at any other time. I would agree that none of the victims probably threatened the killer, like I said, made some kind of overt threat, right? And it's a very difficult area to go into without someone saying, oh, now you're blaming the victims. What you're trying to do is establish some kind of connection from the killer's perspective. So you are trying to go into the criminal psychology. So in what way did the killer feel provoked? Now, that's not to say the killer was justified. That's not to say the killer was right. That's not to say whatever upset the killer was unacceptable even. That's simply to say that is the mechanism that was in play. So I can tell you prior to tonight, prior to me coming on live, I spent 90 minutes writing something, writing the script for tonight, but probably another hour researching it. And I've really worked really, really hard on this. It's probably one of the best scripts I've written in 2-3 months. But I've spent a long time piecing it together and putting it all together, only to find that when I tried to bring it up, it had actually been lost. The platform that I use is supposed to save it often, and it just didn't save it for about over 90 minutes. And I actually felt like I'd been stabbed in the back just from that. And you might listen to that and laugh and say, well, no, that's not really a big deal. You lost your work. It's not a big deal. But I literally felt like I was bleeding. That's how devastating it was to see your work just lost, and in such a cruel way. It's just not fair, and that's what it is. And then you've got to go and spend another 45 minutes recovering and trying to piece together work that you've already done in a way that's not even close to what you've already done. And I just put it together in such a clever way, and then I've just lost all of that work. I don't often spend so much time on a particular script. This time I went all in, and then you lose all of that work. And it's not supposed to be like that. But what I'm trying to get at is that is something that is if not even real for all intents or purposes. I did some work and I lost the work. It's devastating to me. I sort of came onto this live feeling absolutely, just absolutely devastating when that happens. You on that side means absolutely nothing to you. And that's why when you say something like unprovoked, it means nothing to the investigator. It means nothing to the detective. It means nothing to all the students. The question is, how was the perpetrator triggered or upset or whatever was going on in his heart or in his mind where he felt incredibly angry about something? And it's not whether it's rational, it's not whether you care about it, it is trying to figure out what's going on with the criminal in order to solve the case. The idea is not to say, oh, shame, I understand what the killer was going through. That's not what you're trying to do. You're not trying to mollycoddle the killer or justify or rationalize. You're trying to find out what is going on in his effed up mind, right? But you do that by pushing yourself aside and going, what was really upsetting this person? And it may not be something that you would think is a big deal, but it might be a big deal to that person. So what could it be? Well, could it be someone in a sort of same-sex situation that rejects you? You're a man, or you're trying to be a man, or you kind of a masculine figure, and someone is really, really pretty, but it's basically, sorry, I'm with this girl, right? If you're in a particular mindset where you don't really accept that sort of thing, maybe you of a particular religious persuasion, whatever it is, and then you feel like, I don't actually accept that. I don't want that, but it's late at night and maybe you're not thinking very clearly. The question is, what thing really provoked this killer? Not someone saying something directly or doing something directly, but what did the killer experience as provocative, as triggering? And so I personally think it's misleading, and it kind of makes you think that it's a fragmented thing, that someone just randomly committed a murder. No, something connected them in some way that may not be rational to us, or all that significant to us. Might not be the kind of the kind of way that we think, or the cultural apparatus or the moral apparatus that really we subscribe to, but it might be very pertinent to somebody else. Does that make sense? And I've only given you that example of me losing something that I worked on and it being really devastating, really like I actually felt like crying, like I was so upset. And you might listen to that and think, that means absolutely nothing to me. It's not really a big deal. But you've got to get out of that and go, what could have really upset this person so much, right? Not does it make sense to you? How could this have linked the killer? Who is this person? Thanks a lot, Deborah. Deborah says you always go over and above to give your members the best information. Thanks a lot. Thank you. So let's go on with her assessment.
So once he left that crime scene, he still had the same personality, a cold and callous individual who engages in high risk behavior, somebody that can come across as appearing to be normal and is very attached to that knife.
So again, there are certain aspects that she's saying that I agree with. Obviously, he's cold and callous to commit the crime the way that he did, but somebody who can appear normal in society can't be that cold and callous, otherwise they'd stick out. Otherwise, if someone couldn't integrate into society because they were so cold and callous, well, then you could basically say, you could solve this crime like this. You could say, we are looking for a sadistic male. He's extremely cold and callous. Anyone know a really cold and callous male in Moscow, Idaho? Yes, we do. We know a guy is extremely cold and callous. Well, there's your solution. The problem is he is also integrated into society, so he's not just cold and callous. He's not just that. He's also something else. At some point, maybe some of the victims actually like this guy. At some point, maybe one or some of the victims may have invited this guy to a party. At some point, the victims may have invited this guy inside their home. So how cold and callous could he be if he was seen as a friend or seen as someone they wanted to have around at a particular point in time, right? So there must be something about him that's not just cold and callous. He must also be maybe good looking or charming or a friend of someone who the girls knew. There's got to be some connections, not just, well, he committed the murder, he's cold and callous. What is his connection to these beautiful people? I suppose you could make the point that there is no connection and he's just an outsider who is jealous or upset at, let's say, debauchery. Maybe he lives on the other side of town and all he sees is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And he's a very moral person or someone who believes in a different code. You know, you need to, for example, you can't have sex before marriage. And this is really upsetting him. And he's and this crime was like a moral crusade, right? Who knows whether that's the case? I guess it's possible. But then that is what provoked him, right? The reason I've shown that picture of the map shows that there's a military training school right around the corner. I mean, how did this killer get to be in that neighborhood to begin with? Like, how did he know that neighborhood existed, that house existed, those individuals existed? If he was from another part of town, did he just randomly pitch up there? I don't think so. So look at some of your comments. I doubt he was just driving by thinking exactly. I agree with that. And she actually mentions that as well, to her credit. That's also true. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. Stephanie, I heard that you slipped on ice. Really sorry to hear that. I also believe that there are huge storms on their way through the whole of America, the East, tornadoes in the South and whatnot, the Midwest. Looks like it's happening. Okay, some other comments. Missy Love says, maybe he's not afraid of being caught. I think he is, because whatever he's done, he succeeded so far in not being caught. That's also a good point. Kaylee wasn't supposed to be in town. Maybe they'd sort of broken up and she didn't tell him she was back in town. Who knows? Pathfinder, thanks very much. So let's play some more from this interview. Welcome, Liesl McGuire. Didn't you guys know that Liesl's a, I think, ex-lawyer? I'm not sure if you're a current lawyer or an ex-lawyer.
I think as the investigation continues, he'll have sort of a disregard for the investigation. He will.
So I must have found this part quite insightful, quite intuitive, quite interesting. She's saying that because he's a callous guy, in the aftermath to this case, he would probably be quite contemptuous of the investigation. He'd probably scoff at law enforcement. He would watch TV and say, these guys don't know what they're doing. These guys are idiots or whatever. These guys are never going to solve this case or whatever. And he would be disparaging of that, but in an obvious way. He would say to someone else how stupid law enforcement are, or something like that.
Say derogatory things about the police. And he probably has also, at least from what I can tell right now, based on public source information, he could have a serious disdain for women, and particularly.
So I don't know if that's reading a little bit too much into it. I mean, he did kill a man as well. Does he have disdain for women? I mean, like, did Jodi Arias have disdain for men? She killed a man, doesn't mean she has disdain. She had disdain for a particular man. This killer could have had a gripe, a problem with one victim, and then one thing led to another. I don't know if he said, I want to go and kill 3 women. I mean, if he had a problem with women, then why didn't he kill the other 2 survivors in the house? He could have. Why didn't he? It feels like it's somewhat targeted. So I don't know if it's targeted at all women or if it's targeted at some woman in particular. I do think she does have a point that probably there is a little bit of a, whether it's an incel aspect or a misogynistic thing or a thing where someone tends to be almost patriarchal in a sense, where you a male chauvinist. It does seem like there's a masculine aspect that goes so far that it becomes a kind of chauvinism. It does seem like that could be the case, but I don't know if we're dealing with someone who hates all women. I think it's possible because of the way the crime was executed, but bear in mind you had a male victim as well. If you take the murder of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, is that somebody who hates women or hates men? Was that someone who actually was upset because someone was no longer in a relationship with them or whatever, connected to them, right? So you can't always draw too many inferences from that. You can say someone leaves their personality at a crime scene, but also things happen. One thing leads to another at a crime scene. The murder of Ron Goldman, I don't think was part of the plan. So how does that add to your description of the perpetrator? Maybe that he is quite a callous person, that he didn't have to murder Ron Goldman. Also that he can be so enraged. So it is someone who's obviously got who's angry, who can get angry. Okay, let's continue.
Particularly the victims that he went after.
I just want to pick up on 2 things you said right there. You talk about the suspect as a man, and I'm wondering why that's your sense. And then number 2.
Yeah, so I must say, to me, isn't it quite obvious that the killer's a man? Ultra Dark says he has disdain for those women. I don't know if he has disdain for Xana. He may have disdain for both Maddie and Kaylee, but it may also just be that one of them rejected him, and that's where it comes from. Mel Sillis is not all women, but maybe a certain type of female. Ethan may very well have been the target. Sometimes that seems likely, but if Ethan was the target, there's no reason for the killer to go upstairs as well, which is what I think Kaylee's father said. So if the killer came to the house to kill Ethan, Ethan was on the same level as a sliding door. There's no reason then to go upstairs as well. He would have completed his mission, and then he could have gone out. unless, of course, the murder of Ethan woke up Xana, which then also woke up those on the floor above, but I don't really see that happening. No offense. Why do you speak of only one perpetrator? Because I think that's more likely. Okay, so let's continue.
You're suggesting that we might see some kind of acting out by the suspect.
Well, to the point of him being a male, I think statistically that's what we expect. However, if investigators received a very strong lead that they were looking for a female, then they'll certainly need to proceed and follow that lead. No, I don't think that when he's out in public, I don't think he's necessarily acting out. Otherwise, I think he would have come to the attention of law enforcement.
Okay.
I think this is someone that can move back into whatever neighborhood or society or city he came from and not generate a lot of suspicion. Again, because
So do you see, to me, there's a little bit of a contradiction there in saying he's a cold, callous individual, but he doesn't stick out in society. I suppose you could be cold and callous in a way that is not obvious. You could be an introvert, or you go hunting by yourself or something like that. But to say that on the outset, to say this is a cold and callous individual, as though he's got a big pimple on his nose that everyone's going to notice. We're all capable of being cold and callous. That's why I think saying unprovoked, but he's cold and callous, but he fits into society. I don't know if that's I don't know whether that works as a sort of a caricature of this particular person. And like when I was watching this, I kind of had a funny feeling watching it. She'd say certain things that I thought that makes sense, but then she'd say something else that I thought, I'm not sure about that. And then she touched on the killer being a psychopath. And to me, that's not where true crime experts should go. So you say he's a psychopath. Wow, have you solved the case? Have you figured out who he is? Psychopath is a word. It's a label. It really doesn't tell you anything. And she also says something, I think it's in the next clip that I'm going to play. She says something along the lines of psychopath is the new term. It used to be sociopath. It's actually the other way around. They used to say psychopath, and now the new term that they use is sociopath. So that's how I understand it. Maybe I've sort of gotten mixed up somewhere along the line.
I think the public out there really wants this case solved. So they're going to turn in their next door neighbor if they thought the next door neighbor was responsible. I think this person is being able to be a good actor and kind of hold all that violence and those vital ideations inside.
There's reporting one student had more severe knife wounds. If that's true, what's the significance?
When you look at a case like this, where there are multiple victims, you look to see, was any one victim treated differently? And that treated differently can mean, was that victim stabbed more times, stabbed more excessively? Were there other injuries to that victim? Because that could mean that that particular victim was actually the focus of the attack.
Stephanie says, why not leave the dog home? She wanted to show off her new car and go out with her friends. I would like to know, did she take her dog with her home and then bring the dog back into 1122? Seems to me like she left the dog at 1122, unless I misunderstood that. Did she take the dog home? Because wasn't it her dog, effectively? Stone Cold says, I think the dog was put in the room prior to all of this. Put in a room, yes, it wasn't in a bedroom. But you would think that the dog would be, because it's cold, because it's winter, that the dog would normally be sleeping with where the victims were. Wouldn't you think that? Or maybe not. Maybe the dog, I don't know. I suppose that's definitely quite interesting. The Humble Grow, thanks a lot for that. Someone says CBS News, oh no. Well, we're just playing what an expert is saying on that. I do agree in terms of that, Pauline Buckles. I do agree that probably there was a percolating of emotion over a period of time. I think that is the case. But then again, can you say it's unprovoked? I mean, it's not provoked in the sense that somebody did something, but it probably is related to, it could be related to romantic feelings, or it could be related to perhaps moral feelings or something. Or someone thinking it's immoral or something. It's just hard to imagine someone living in a student town would be agitated by what they think's immoral. I mean, why live in the town then? But who knows? They're now saying the dog was loose outside. Who's saying that? Some people don't sleep with animals in bed. I guess that's true as well. Oh, that's interesting. Pauline says you can see a dog bed on the top floor balcony. Yeah, but I don't think, you mean outside? I don't think the dog was supposed to sleep outside, but who knows? Bonnie says that breed of dog is usually very verbal. Interesting. Oh, it is on Nancy Grace. Okay. I know they shared the dog. Yeah. Okay. So let's play a little bit more from this.
And that's why there was quote unquote special treatment of the victim. And it could be a range of behavior that the offender inflicts on the victim, but the attention is on that one or on those two victims. And that is pretty significant because it gives them.
So you kind of get different takes from different folks. So some will say, don't read too much in the victims. I can't remember who said it. Someone said that they dealt with a case where a victim was more badly injured, but that victim was trying to defend themselves. So I don't know if it necessarily means that. I do think you've got to think about it both ways. You've got to think who sustained more injuries. Could that be the primary victim? Also, who else could be the primary victim? I think you've got to think through it kind of both ways, which I think we've been doing.
Investigators the information that they really want to go back and develop the victimology of that targeted victim. That becomes really important. Know as much as you can about that victim to be able to see at what point did that victim possibly come on the radar screen of that offender.
So that's really true. If you are saying, okay, so I think someone was targeted, then you do want to go and look at what is that victim saying and doing and whatever. But then it comes back to this idea of, was it a provoked attack? Now, maybe I'm being unkind by harping on that word, but I think what she means is they were all asleep in bed. It wasn't someone who made an insult or punched somebody. You know, it happened. How can I put it? It happened where the killer had the first move advantage, and he did it because of what is going on in him. But I still think you've got to deal with the fact that it's connected in some way. It's not unprovoked. It's not provoked in the sense that they were in a group and in the middle of this, there was a crime taking place. But something did, provoke's not really the right word, something did, some dynamic did activate this criminal. And yeah, she says that. You've got to look at how did the victim come on the criminal's radar? and vice versa? How did the criminal come onto the victim's radar? Well, probably through a party. Thanks a lot, Terry. I'm about to wrap up. We passed 2 hours. I'm about to wrap up. Let's just do the last few minutes of this.
In law enforcement circles, there's a term, instrumental violence. What does that mean, and how does it apply here?
Instrumental violence is a unique type of violence. Two types of violence, reactive violence and instrumental violence. Reactive violence is if you punch somebody in the nose, they'll punch you back. Instrumental violence is cold-blooded, it's callous.
So when she says instrumental violence, that's different to, in other words, it's not a provoked attack. So she says someone punches you in the nose, you punch them back. That is a provoked attack. But there was some kind of symbolic punching in the nose in this case, right? Anyway, she says something quite interesting here on instrumental violence. Okay.
It's unprovoked, usually inflicted on strangers, but here's the key. Instrumental violence is the preferred violence of a psychopathic individual. The old term was sociopath. The new term that we use now is psychopathic. This is an individual that's not mentally ill and has absolutely no conscience or no remorse or guilt for what they do, and they prefer instrumental violence.
We just have a few seconds left. Do you believe, based on the evidence in your experience, that this individual has killed before?
I believe that based on the success, unfortunately, that this person had, this is somebody that if he has not been engaged with a human being using that knife, he's used it on a warm-blooded animal.
So I thought she ended that quite well. I must say, I don't know if I don't know what I think. What do you guys think about the sociopath thing? My knowledge is that psychopath was the term that has been superseded by the sociopath term. So I'm not sure if she just, I'm not sure if that was just a little bit of a boo-boo. Thanks a lot, Humble Grower. Terry Dean says, I'm curious which lock got worked on. As far as I know, it was Xana's father who came and worked on Xana's bedroom door lock. That's I don't know whether the lock was broken or whether it was old or whether it needed changing because she wanted to keep someone out. I don't know, but that adds an element of, we could be wrong about everything. If you think about it, it seems like there's consensus that Kaylee and Maddie are the likely targets, and then Ethan is the next likely after them, and Xana like the least likely of all of them. Well, the fact that Xana's bedroom door locks may have been changed, perhaps for her security, that kind of elevates her to possibly the most likely victim in just within that, right? Doesn't it? Okay, so I think that is it. Randy says needs to be investigated. Okay. So, Mods, are you noticing some really nasty comments in chat? I've just really had a look. If you do, just get rid of them. I really don't need to deal with this sort of thing. So if you notice that sort of thing, I don't mind if you're ruthless. You don't need to be that nasty. So let's deal with the last couple of comments in the last 5 minutes. Jean Panic says, I can't figure out why an actual medical examiner wasn't brought in. Maybe because it's a small town. Good night, Miranda writes. Good to have you here. Baby Girl says Kaylee's dad said he did not have to go up. Yeah, they did not have to go upstairs. Super chat preferably run the world. Super chat preferably. But thanks a lot for bringing that up. Altasora Aurora, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. It would be good to look at the landlord property manager as well. As a young woman, I've had quite a few creepy landlords. That's definitely an interesting thing to bring up. Another thing that's quite interesting, if you didn't know about this vehicle, if you didn't know about this white vehicle that is being reported on so heavily at the moment, one thing that people haven't really spoken about is there's a big block of flats. There's apartment blocks right next to the house. So you could theoretically have a perpetrator run out of one of those apartment blocks and commit the crime, and then he lives right around the corner, and he could get in and out, and there wouldn't be the difficulty of being seen by anyone, unless you include that you could be seen by folks in the apartment block. But I'm just saying, you could also have the scenario of someone who lives right next door goes there, commits the crime, gets back, and no one's going to know. Stephanie says, my reflexes are delayed tonight. Okay, you're excused. Well, you fell as well, so there's that as well. Yeah, I must say, I'm still reeling from, I couldn't believe that that all of that effort that I put in was just not there. I just absolutely couldn't believe it. All that wasted time. Oh. Thanks a lot, Run the World. That's really kind of you. Thanks so much. I like the hat. Okay, last couple of comments. Bonnie says, I agree that the person walked, lives nearby. Well, this vehicle is suggesting that they may have driven, if the vehicle is from the perpetrators. So for a long time, I think we have thought walking maybe. Now it looks like it could be this vehicle that you see behind me. Yeah, that's right, Ellie. That's correct. C. Vigus says there's so little information, we are best to consider many different scenarios. Okay, let's have a look at what's making the news right now. Let me quickly see if there's any new news. Doesn't look like it. The main news is, the biggest news is what I've just told you guys, or I told you at the beginning. It's really this story. Cops take hours of video from gas station after Clerk spots white car on night of stabbings. So that's quite new. Do you guys agree that this is quite new and possibly a breakthrough for the police, that they've gotten this video, and then they've also gotten video from the sort of restaurant area, just even closer to the home, and I think they've also gotten video from the corner club. But if you think about exactly what this is, it seems like the cops have gotten evidence that was there all along, more than a month later. Today is the 13th of December, but you know, it's not Sunday. But it's basically taken a month for evidence that was there all along just to be uncovered. That's quite surprising, isn't it? And one wonders whether this is going to kickstart the if it's going to kind of jumpstart the investigation and kind of take it where it needs to go a lot quicker. It feels like that. Certainly feels like that. Yeah, a calendar month has passed. It does seem like someone could have driven there, done something, and driven away, which suggests they're not from the neighborhood, and may not even be a student. Could be a stolen car. Someone said that, yeah. Could be a combination of being asleep late at night and intoxication. The toxicology will confirm that aspect. Carlito says if they were fairly minor injuries, they could be healed by the time they finally name a suspect. Yeah, I must say, great minds think alike. The longer they take to find the criminal, the more likely those injuries will have healed. On the other hand, if it's somewhat significant, like cutting type injuries, can take a little while. So who knows? Thanks a lot, Susan. That's a kind comment. Thanks a lot. Do you still think he'll be caught before Christmas? I do. I think he's going to be caught in the next couple of days. That's my opinion. That's what I think. Yeah, I mean, it is surprising that law enforcement didn't just try and collect all the CCTV from all the vendors for that time. To me, that's quite bizarre. Like, why wouldn't law enforcement go to all the places that have got CCTV cameras and just collect all of that evidence? I find it crazy that that's not the case. Isn't that crazy to you guys? That, like, you would imagine in a crime like this, law enforcement, one of the things they would start with is you'd go to try and find CCTV from everywhere nearby that place and collect that footage from businesses and premises. Okay, last couple of comments. Think so, Rick. That's quite scary. Christopher Carpenter says, is anyone giving any credence to the former roommate? I don't know about that. I haven't heard anything about that. That's definitely news to me. Is it elementary? Like, as Sherlock Holmes would say, elementary, my dear Watson, right? I do think they've got a fairly good idea who it is now. Humble Grove says, do you think the holidays added to the crime? I think the impending holiday may have played a role in, oh, you're not inviting me to that. And the parties are getting bigger and bigger towards the end of the year, and I'm not part of that. I think that could have played a factor. I mean, think about yourself. As you approach Christmas, you become more anxious and stressed, either because you've got parties to attend and parties to arrange, or because you feel like you might be alone. There's an aspect to it that can be quite stressful. Dover says it's a girl she lived with in the dorms they're referring to. It's interesting. Could be. Amityville murders occurred 13/11 between 3 and 4 while sleeping. Address was 112. I'll look into that. That's quite interesting. Quite an interesting observation. Definitely quite interesting. Elucidate says, I have a hard time imagining the person was a local. Well, that was the same. Remember that issue in the Delphi case? People had a hard time imagining that someone local could do something like this, and he was living in plain sight, right? Thanks a lot, Barbara. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, if the killer was about to have a horrible Christmas, maybe he did want to ruin everyone's holiday plans. Maybe he's not passing his, if he is a student of some sort, if he's dropped out or whatever, or if he's, I don't know, maybe he didn't want anyone else to have a happy holiday. Terry says there's a Fox article with Gonsalves' lawyer, if you haven't covered that. Let's see if I can find it. I'm quite tired. Kaylee. See if I can find it. Just seeing things about legal action. Idaho murder victim's family hires local attorney. Okay, so there I did find it. Okay, so this is one of the latest articles. I think it came out today. Idaho murder victim's family hires local attorney amid frustrations with police probe. They say police haven't publicly named a suspect. And so he's hired a local attorney amid a souring relationship with police, concerns over missteps. Shannon Gray of Gray Law Criminal Defense. What just happened there? Cases range from kidnappings to drunken driving arrests. He says, I have a lawyer for a reason. And he says he rarely communicates with police directly. They talk to my lawyer now. Okay. So that's basically just that little bit of news, I guess. So who knows, if you do look at this aspect that it took a clerk to sort of find certain footage, I really think that that's the sort of thing law enforcement needed to do, not like ask for tips and not ask the public to do things. They need to do certain things themselves. So who knows, maybe Kaylee's father getting a lawyer is going to give certain people a bit of a kick in the pants. Maybe they need it. I don't know. Maybe they feel that they're on the right track anyway, and so they haven't done certain things. But I have to say, I hope that they're going to try and trace the route of this vehicle through all the CCTV along the projected route. I hope they're going to do that, and I would anticipate they would do that. One also wonders, what are law enforcement doing that the FBI aren't doing, and vice versa? Because you'd also imagine with an army of FBI agents and detectives, you've got all of these people. Did no one think to go just and deal with the CCTV aspect? Did no one say, okay, I will sort that out. I will go and get all the CCTV? Was it like too many investigators, or like too many cooks spoil the broth? I don't really agree with that. Do you really think that Kaylee's father is a suspect? I mean, I don't. He does seem very invested in this, and wouldn't you be? Wouldn't you be frustrated? And isn't there a little bit of an aspect of Kaylee's father's personality in Kaylee, and isn't that a clue to something? Doesn't Kaylee's father and Kaylee's family give us a little bit of insight into the kind of person she is? Maybe doesn't take too much nonsense, whatever it is. I agree. I don't think the dad's involved at all. The dad, yeah, is that. Alphabetized says you'd be wise to hire a lawyer anytime you have to deal with the police or courts, if you can afford them. Okay, so I think that is it from my side. Latitude says, I like this community, not crazy like most YouTube channel chats. We try not to be. Atlas Aurora says, you hire a lawyer to speak on your behalf. I get too emotional during custody hearings, so I hire a lawyer. Yeah, so that's a good point as well. Do you think DNA was left at the scene? I do as well. Yeah. Kami says, I'm glad they re-interviewed people. Suzie says, something about bullying. I don't know, like, if you take that bullying thing and you, so where can that take you? I suppose it could take you to that person's sister as a vendetta, but then shouldn't that be against Maddie? Or brother, or some relative, I guess, or the boyfriend of the person who was bullied. But then the victim should be Maddie. But then why commit a crime now? Like why now? And why not just do something to Maddie? I don't know. But it's certainly probably worth thinking about. Elise says, oh gosh, just got here. I'll have to watch via replay. You will have to. So I'm not going to take it further than that. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being here. I hope you found the intertextualities with the OJ case and so on interesting. As you can see that in a knife crime, you have the very real possibility that the killer is injured both by his victims. In this case, 4 victims could have injured him. And also he could have injured himself, very likely did, because the knife gets greasy, gets slippery, slips out of his hand. His knife slips off the handle of the knife and onto the blade. Bear in mind he's going like this, but it's getting slippery, and he can literally cut his fingers, cut his palm as well. He can drop the knife, drop it onto himself. As he picks the knife up, cut himself as well. There are all sorts of opportunities for that. Just the 4 victim aspect means he's got to do a lot in a short time. There's a really good chance that he did injure himself and has left DNA. So that's definitely an issue here. The vehicle that has been spotted brings, I think it's maybe the second biggest breakthrough in this case. In this case, I think the first breakthrough is the announcement of the vehicle, and the second one is that we are starting to track the movement of it. And I think I think the screws are slowly turning in terms of the suspect here. Who knows what the police have gotten from the crime scene? Who knows what they've gotten from victim statements? We'll see. Did any of the roommates know about someone who drove a white vehicle? That'll be quite interesting. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Thanks, Mod. Stephanie, I hope you're going to be okay after that fall. Terry, all you guys, SM Kowalinsky, thank you so much for feeding me a lot of the news that you do. Thanks so much. Thanks to all of you for being here. Mods, members, subs, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks also for the super chats. I'll be continuing to cover this case, but expect a breakthrough soon, maybe before the end of this week, maybe any day now. I really do. So thanks again, guys. Take care. It's 20 to 4 in the morning. I'm going to try and get some sleep and try and forget about something that happened earlier today that upset me. I'll see you guys next time. All the best.